Okay, everyone, this is Dennis Nayer, the Director of Research, Development, and Training for the New York State Association of Chiefs of Police. And today I have the privilege of speaking to Chuck DeWeese, who's the Assistant Commissioner for the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee. So good morning, Chuck.
Good morning, Dennis. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being here for this podcast. And we just wanted to cover a few things. I know you were part of a traffic safety panel that spoke at the State Chiefs Conference this July, and you covered some really important issues. And what I'd like to spend is a few minutes just talking about some of those main issues on traffic safety.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I enjoyed being a member of the panel. As a matter of fact, I just came back from a national conference in Louisville, Kentucky, the Governor's Highway Safety Association, which a couple of your members had the pleasure of coming to. And, you know, one of the biggest problems we're facing in the traffic safety world is a significant downturn across the whole country with traffic citations and traffic stops. And, you know, I'm not sure if there's any correlation, but traffic stops are down and traffic fatalities and injuries are up across the country. So one of our main focuses is to try to, and I hate to use this word, but re-engage law enforcement to try to make traffic safety sexy again for law enforcement. You know, most law enforcement officers don't go into law enforcement to write seatbelt tickets and to, you know, stop speeders. They want to, you know, solve murders and crimes. But clearly, traffic enforcement is the cornerstone of law enforcement. You know, all criminals either drive to or from their crimes in a vehicle. So, you know, some of the most notorious criminals were caught, you know, either going to a crime or leaving a crime. So, you know, that's what the panel was for, and that's kind of the mission of GTSC this year, is to re-engage law enforcement. We have a couple law enforcement partnership forums that are coming up. The first one is next week out in Geneva, where we're trying to, you know, get law enforcement to sit around a table and talk about some of the common challenges that law enforcement is having. You know, a lack of manpower, being pulled in multiple directions. Heroin is eating the lunch of many chiefs. Gangs, all kinds of issues. But there are leaders in the police world who are struggling with those same issues and also finding ways to overcome them and continue with their traffic enforcement. And that's kind of the goal of our forums over the next coming year.
Yeah, and as someone who's tried to follow the trends, traffic issues are still a leading cause of fatalities nationally, so it's such an important topic that it must be addressed and can't be ignored.
Yeah, I mean, we lose over 32,000, 33,000 people a year in this country. It's like a 747 going down once a week, and it just seems like, you know, there's not a lot of media attention to it. If there was a plane crash once a week in this country, can you imagine what the nightly news would be like? But I guess it's come to be expected that we're going to lose, you know, 1,100, 1,000 people in New York State a year, and over 30,000 as a country. So, you know, that's what we're here. You know, we're here to give grant funds to police agencies to help with enforcement. You know, 94% of crashes are the result of human behavior, not the vehicle, not the roadway. So we want to try to alter behavior, and we have two ways to do that. It's through education and enforcement. And clearly, the law enforcement agencies, our partners in law enforcement across New York State, are a critical component in changing behavior.
And I think we can both agree completely that those numbers are just not acceptable. Any fatality is not, and any effort to reduce those numbers is well worth the time and resources spent.
Absolutely, and like I said, that's our goal. If people want to go on our website, you know, www.safeny.ny.gov, you know, we have a annual report that we do every year, plus our highway safety plan. You know, there are thousands of things that GTSC does in partnership with law enforcement. We can't do this alone. Your association has been wonderful in you know, helping us get the message out through press events, through our high visibility enforcement campaigns. You know, Click It or Ticket, Drive Sober, Get Pulled Over. April is Distracted Driving Awareness Month. You know, our pedestrian safety action plan, we lose over 300 people a year in pedestrian crashes, staggering numbers in our state. But without without the partnership we have with law enforcement, we don't really have anything. Education alone, I don't know that changes behavior when you see a poster or a billboard that says "click it or ticket." But if a mile down the road you see a checkpoint where they're checking for seatbelts, the two together tend to change behavior, and that's kind of what it's all about and why we have this partnership.
And can you just tell the listeners, it was obviously the main contributing causes for a lot of fatalities and injuries over the years have been seatbelts, speed, alcohol or drug involvement, and now obviously distracted driving has taken a high-profile position in that. Can you just talk a little bit about that and what officers and agencies can do to help combat that?
Well, yes, we lose approximately 1/4 of our fatalities a year are through pedestrian fatalities. Another third is through impaired driving, drugs and alcohol. Obviously, drugs is overtaking alcohol recently with the opioid epidemic we're having. 175 or so are motorcyclists. So speed is a big factor in crashes, but the contributing factors haven't changed over the last 50 years. It's belts, booze, and speed are typically what's killing people. Distraction is our newest problem that we've are facing. There's always been distractions in a vehicle. It's just now that 90% of the population has 2 or 3 smartphones, and everybody is addicted to them. That when it buzzes or beeps, they have to look at it while they're driving. So enforcement alone is helping. We have a good law in New York State. It's a 5 points for a violation of that law. We need law enforcement to continue writing citations for that, but we also need the courts to convict on the original charge on that. So it's an education of law enforcement. It's an education of prosecutors. It's an education of judges. We're studying right now some technology that's been coming to the forefront called the Textilizer. We had our first forum yesterday, which is intended to be Celebrite is making a device, a prototype, that a law enforcement officer, after a crash, will plug into somebody's cell phone, and it will detect whether or not the person was swiping or typing on the cell phone. Will not have any access to the data on the phone, but the intent is that you'll be able to determine whether or not somebody was texting or swiping or using Facebook or Instagram immediately before a crash. Don't know yet where we're going with that. We're just in the infancy stages of studying it, but I really do think that we need to come to a point where technology got us into this problem. Technology is going to get us out of the problem. I would rather see devices that are put into vehicles that block the ability to use a phone and to text by just the driver. You want the ability of your passengers and your backseat passengers, your kids when you're driving to Florida, to be able to use their smartphone, their devices, but to block it just for the driver. And I think we'll get there someday.
Yeah, I think that would be excellent, and it would definitely put a curb to some of the distracted driving that's going on by the drivers themselves.
Right.
Are there any mechanisms that you can recommend for police chiefs, administrators, and that they can keep up on the traffic safety, the trends, maybe attend when conferences are going to be held? I know usually in April the SLES conference is held in New York, which is always very valuable. I know ITSMR just had a conference. Where can police administrators keep up on these things?
Well, I got to tell you, the Chiefs of Police Association is very fortunate to have, Dominic Masheroon as your liaison between the association and the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee. Nick puts out better than anybody, his newsletters, the Chronicle magazine, the association website, the GTSC website, but Nick does a monthly newsletter that goes out to all membership and contains everything that we're doing, has DRE and A-RIDE training. He goes above and beyond trying to reach out to law enforcement executives to let them know what's out there, what training. He does pedestrian safety training for law enforcement, motorcycle training for law enforcement, commercial motor vehicle training for law enforcement. So there's a whole host of resources out there, and I just urge chiefs to, if you haven't, to reach out to Nick and introduce yourself and become be on the phone with him once a week or once a month and find out what we're doing and how we can partner together.
Excellent. Yeah, and I agree. He is a great resource. And last but not least, to close out our podcast, most people or a lot of agencies partake in the GTSC traffic safety grant. Uh, Any other grants that you can steer police agencies toward in helping them?
I mean, our grants are there for police. That's what they're there for. You know, we look for police agencies to use data. Look at where their problems are. We have the resources available to you through the ITSMR Traffic Safety Statistical Repository. You can go in there and look at your locality. You can look at the problems you're having, time of day, day of week, whether it's speed, distraction, or what the issues are. Use data. You know, use the DDAX model where you lay out where your crashes are and you overlay where your crime is, and then you put your limited resources in those areas, and you reduce both traffic crashes and violations and also crime. So our grant funds are there. The Police Traffic Services grants, it's a competitive pool, but the money is there so that police can go out and do traffic enforcement. So not only do we have Police Traffic Services grants, but we also have child passenger safety grants if you have officers that are child passenger safety technicians or wannabe. You can get CPS grants. And then we have just your highway safety grants. If there's something else that you're interested in trying, write a good proposal. We consider them, and we give out a substantial amount of money each year to law enforcement to help reduce crashes.
That's excellent information. Again, this is Chuck DeWeese, the Assistant Commissioner for the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee, who's been with us. Chuck, we thank you for providing this information, and we all agree that this is a cause to continue fighting in terms of traffic safety. So thank you.
Dennis, thank you very much for the podcast, and to all the law enforcement out there, please don't hesitate to reach out to GTSC. You guys are our number one partner, and we look forward to working with you.